Any response to what Emily Lau just said?
Well, I'm afraid that in light of the riots happening, the escalating violence happening these days, it's not that very easy for any response from the government to pacify everyone on the street. I mean, you look from the demands from the rioters, they're not only talking about one demand, they say like 5 or even 6 demands. They even say to dissolve the police. It's not easy to pacify everyone, but at the same time, I think the first thing is we need to make that very clear. People oppose the violence, and we have been asking everyone in the society to cut ties with the violence. At least you know that these days they occupy the university, and even petrol bombs are being thrown everywhere. They even throw the petrol bomb towards a school bus with kids there. Now they are doing something harming the life of others. I mean, this is something about concerning public safety. And you can't just simply say, well, because we want a response from the government and now we're escalating the violence, and right now at this point, they are harming the lives of everyone. So I think this is totally wrong. And we have to make that very clear. A message to the entire society. We urge the opposition camp to cut ties with the violence. They also refuse to do that. They turn a blind eye to what's happening last week by seeing even the court is burned right now. You read all the news. The court was burned last week. And the opposition camp, they turn a blind eye to this. They remain silent and still make excuse for the violence happening on the street. Nonsense.
But isn't the government turning a blind eye to the protesters' demands as well? Why won't they just even simply have an independent inquiry? Something as simple as that?
Well, you know, we have been talking about this for a long time.
What about the dialogue that was meant to be happening? There was one town hall meeting. There hasn't been another one since then.
Well, we say that the dialogue should carry on. But right now, you see all the escalating violence, the mayhem is happening everywhere. I think it's very difficult for the government to host dialogue. But I agree with you at one point, the dialogue should continue. But at least right now, see what's happened last week. I think at least you should put an end to this escalating violence. If everyone in the society came out with a voice out the concern and tell the people or the protester to stop, just to stop and calm down right now, stop the violence, and then we can proceed to more dialogue. And also, in response to your question about like independent inquiry to police, we have been suggesting the government, well, instead of doing independent inquiry to police right now, we can do, say, following the example of the United Kingdom when they deal with the riot a few years earlier, you set out a commission
yes.
to carry out a study to look at the reasons of all the social unrest.
Absolutely, an all-encompassing inquiry.
Yes. This is something covering everything. So it's not really targeting just the police. I think this is something that we want to make that very clear to everyone. Yeah.
What do you make of the PLA? And we saw officers cleaning up. I mean, is this a sign of the beginnings of any form of military intervention, or is this all just community service as we were seeing reported?
Well, I think the PLA, the garrison, came out to give us a hand in clearing the roads. You can tell from the public that people welcome the coming out to give us a hand in clearing the road. And I'm surprised to see that the opposition camp, right after they came out, they just accused the PLA garrison by against the law and stuff like that. I think that is nonsense because, you know, the roads are being blocked. These days, people's daily life are seriously affected. And now the PLA garrison, they're just doing something on voluntary basis to give us a hand. And it happened.
You don't think it's Beijing sending a message?
Well, I think the message is very clear that the PLA garrison is just giving us a hand in clearing the road. And, you know, before, there was an example too, because last year, you recall that there was a very serious typhoon.
Yeah.
And after that, the PLA garrison also came out to help clear everywhere. So I think it's a very voluntary, on a very voluntary basis. And instead of accusing the PLA garrison by coming out, why don't they just say something about the violence and tell people to stop? Instead, the opposition can just turn a blind eye and accuse the PLA garrison. Nonsense.
Holden, do you think that the administration, the government here in Hong Kong, is in touch with the people that they supposedly are meant to represent?
Well, I think the government should engage with people in Hong Kong.
I'm not asking that question. I'm saying, are they in touch, though?
Well, sorry, I think they should be in touch with everyone.
Yes, of course they should. But I'm asking you, are they?
Well, in that case, I don't know, because I don't know what you're asking about. Are they really in touch with what? I mean, the people on the street?
The feeling on the streets, that's what I'm saying. Are they?
Oh, right, okay. Well, they should. They have a duty to do that. But I also, last week, you did raise a very good question. Last week, in the chamber, in Let's Go chamber, I asked a question to the Chief Secretary, how they're going to handle the impasse right now in light of this sort of violence. And it seems that they don't give us any particular response, or they don't let us know what they are going to do. So it seems that we have no clue on what they are going to do. And you did ask a very good question, because people don't know what they are going to do. And people have a perception that they are not in touch with the people.
Exactly. And Holden, I'll give you another question here as well. Last week we saw Hong Kong's Justice Secretary going to London, and of course, sadly, she was attacked there by some protest demonstrators there in London itself. Now, this woman was in London promoting Hong Kong as a dispute resolution hub. Now, what hope does she have of actually being able to sell it with what's going on right now? On top of that, what is the Justice Secretary doing out of Hong Kong at a time like this?
Well, I think she apparently has a lot of things need to do in Hong Kong. I'm not the one to control her schedule.
Absolutely.
She's the one to
but I'm just giving, are they in touch with what's going on? A dispute resolution hub for Hong Kong?
Well, I think since that happened, of course, a lot of people are surprised, and of course, they denounce, including myself, of course, I denounce the people who attack her in London.
Naturally,
of course,
and everybody should do, yes.
But at the same time, we also voice out our concern, like what you have just pointed out. I mean, the government officials, we want them to, of course, pay attention to what has been happening here and give us more positive response. And we also urge the government to take appropriate measures to deal with the incidents here.
Holden, I'm just going to say, I'm just playing devil's advocate here as well. So, right, I'm not attacking you.
I was going to ask you about the elections next week. What happens if pro-democracy lawmakers gain more seats? Do you think that would force the government to change its policies?
You know, we are fighting a sort of uphill battle for our pro-establishment camp. I must admit that. We are facing a very difficult situation right now. And we don't know what the results would be. All we can do is do our best and do the uphill battle this coming election, this Sunday. And, but of course, this is a time, a chance, an opportunity for people to presenting their view by casting their ballot. And I think over the past few weeks, I have also been in touch with people in Hong Kong, and a lot of people will say they don't want the violence to continue in the city. So I think people would make their judgment. It's their call how to vote in this coming Sunday. But one thing for sure, I should say, the election should carry on 24th of November, not being cancelled and not being postponed, because people are expecting an election to be carried out, and also on a safe, a fair basis. We also urge the government to make sure that on the election day, people could go out to cast their ballots on a safe basis. Make sure that they are safe. Otherwise, it's unfair, because people see that the rioters are throwing petrol bomb everywhere. If they threaten their safety, how could they go out to vote?
But absolutely, Holden. But the point is, they can vote for whoever. They can vote for you again. But you can raise a question in LegCo, and as you did the other day, last week, and not get an answer. So, I mean, you've got to ask yourself then, what's the point of these elections fundamentally if they're going to just ignore their constituency, which is all you people representing your relative constituencies too?
Well, but I think you are all familiar with democratic principles. That election is something, is a process for people to present their views. Is a way that under our constitution to allow people to present the view. So I think the election should still carry on. And I don't think that the way, as you said, the election,
you had the evidence
and stuff like that. No,
they had, but they that was what happened last week. They didn't answer your question. I mean, there was no way of getting them to do
Well,
anything.
they might not answer our question on that day, but we will keep
Well, let's
pushing
hope
and
so.
pressing the government to do something. So let's see how it goes. But at least I just want to make my point clear that election is still important, and I hope that election will continue on the 24th of November, this Sunday, and make sure that the government has a duty to make sure that the election is carried out on a safe basis. Make sure that people are safe to go out to cast their ballot.